John Jay was a New York aristocrat and a brilliant legal mind who became one of the founding fathers of his country. John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the United States, was born in New York City on December 12, 1745. He came from a wealthy merchant family. He had a dignified and reserved bearing. Jay's family connections were influential. He was educated at King's College, now Columbia University, graduating at the age of 19 with honors in 1764. Then he studied law and was admitted to the New York Bar in 1768, quickly establishing himself as one of the most promising attorneys in the colony. John Jay was a man of privilege who owned slaves during his lifetime, though he would later become a vocal advocate for abolition. In 1774, as tensions mounted between Britain and the American colonies, Jay was elected to the First Continental Congress. He was not initially a radical revolutionary. Jay hoped for reconciliation with Britain. He drafted petitions seeking compromise and peaceful resolution to the growing conflict between the colonies and the Crown. John Jay was among the more conservative delegates who believed in exhausting every diplomatic option before resorting to armed rebellion. He feared the chaos that revolution might bring. But as Britain continued its harsh policies and refused to address colonial grievances, Jay's position evolved. When independence became inevitable, he committed himself fully to the Patriot cause. In 1776, Jay returned to New York where he helped draft the state's first constitution. He was appointed Chief Justice of New York, a position that demonstrated the respect his legal expertise commanded. Jay worked tirelessly to establish a functioning court system in the midst of war. New York was a critical battleground, and Jay's leadership helped maintain civil order even as military conflicts raged. But Jay's talents were needed beyond New York's borders. In 1778, he was elected president of the Continental Congress. This was largely a ceremonial position, but it placed Jay at the center of the revolutionary government. He served during one of the most difficult periods of the war when American fortunes seemed darkest. Jay worked to maintain unity among the fractious colonies and to secure the resources needed to continue the fight. Then in 1779, Congress sent Jay to Spain as a diplomatic envoy. His mission was to secure recognition, financial support, and an alliance with the Spanish crown. Jay spent nearly 3 frustrating years in Spain. The Spanish government was reluctant to recognize American independence, fearing it might inspire rebellions in their own colonial empire. Jay negotiated tirelessly but achieved limited success. Spain provided some covert financial assistance but refused formal recognition or alliance. The experience taught Jay valuable lessons about European power politics and the precarious position of the new American nation. In 1782, Jay traveled to Paris to join Benjamin Franklin and John Adams in negotiating the treaty to end the Revolutionary War. The peace negotiations were extraordinarily complex. The American diplomats had to navigate competing interests among Britain, France, Spain, and the Netherlands while securing the best possible terms for the United States. Jay played a crucial role in these negotiations. He was suspicious of French motives and convinced his fellow diplomats to negotiate separately with Britain rather than allowing France to control the process. Jay's instincts proved correct. By dealing directly with the British, the American negotiators secured far more favorable terms than they might have otherwise obtained. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, granted the United States independence and established borders that extended to the Mississippi River. This was a diplomatic triumph, and Jay deserved significant credit for the achievement. His legal precision and diplomatic skill helped secure the territorial foundation for American expansion. After the war, Jay returned to America and was appointed Secretary of Foreign Affairs under the Articles of Confederation. He served from 1784 to 1789, managing the young nation's international relations during a critical period. Jay dealt with ongoing disputes with Britain over treaty violations, negotiations with Spain over navigation rights on the Mississippi River, and the challenge of establishing American credibility on the world stage. The experience convinced Jay that the Articles of Confederation were inadequate for effective governance. Jay became a strong supporter of a new constitution that would create a more powerful federal government. He collaborated with Alexander Hamilton and James Madison to write the Federalist Papers, a series of essays arguing for ratification of the proposed Constitution. Jay contributed 5 essays before illness forced him to stop writing. His essays addressed foreign policy and the dangers facing a weak, divided nation. Jay argued that a strong federal government was essential for national security and international respect. The Constitution was ratified in 1788, and the new government was established. George Washington became the first president, and he appointed John Jay as the first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Jay was sworn in on October 19, 1789. As Chief Justice, Jay had the enormous responsibility of defining the role of the federal judiciary and establishing the Supreme Court as a co-equal branch of government. Jay served as Chief Justice for 6 years. During his tenure, the court heard relatively few cases, and its role was not yet clearly defined. Jay worked to establish the court's dignity and independence. He insisted on proper courtroom decorum and procedures. Jay authored several important opinions that began to define federal judicial power. He established the principle that the Supreme Court would not issue advisory opinions, maintaining the court's independence from the executive and legislative branches. But Jay found the Chief Justice position frustrating in many ways. The Supreme Court met only briefly each year, and much of a justice's time was spent riding circuit, traveling to hear cases in lower federal courts across the country. The travel was exhausting and took Jay away from his family for months at a time. The Supreme Court had not yet established itself as the powerful institution it would later become, and Jay felt his talents were underutilized. In 1794, while still serving as Chief Justice, Jay accepted a diplomatic mission that would define his legacy and prove enormously controversial. Relations between the United States and Britain had deteriorated badly since the Revolutionary War. Britain refused to evacuate military posts in the Northwest Territory as required by the Treaty of Paris. British ships seized American vessels trading with France, with whom Britain was at war. The two nations seemed headed toward another conflict that the young United States could ill afford. President Washington sent Jay to London to negotiate a treaty that would resolve these disputes and preserve peace. Jay negotiated for months with the British government. The resulting agreement, known as Jay's Treaty, was signed in November 1794. The treaty required Britain to evacuate the Northwest posts by 1796 and established commissions to resolve various financial claims between the two nations. It granted the United States limited trading rights with British colonies. But Jay's treaty failed to address many American grievances. It did not secure British recognition of American neutral trading rights. It did not provide compensation for slaves carried away by British forces during the war. It required the United States to repay pre-war debts to British merchants, an unpopular provision. Many Americans viewed the treaty as a humiliating capitulation to British demands. When the treaty's terms became public in 1795, Jay was vilified across the country. Angry mobs burned him in effigy. He joked that he could travel across America by the light of his burning effigies. Democratic-Republican societies organized protests against the treaty and against Jay personally. Critics accused him of betraying American interests and selling out to the British. The treaty became a focal point for the growing partisan divide between Federalists and Democratic Republicans. But Jay and the Federalists argued that the treaty, while imperfect, preserved peace and provided time for the young nation to grow stronger. War with Britain would have been catastrophic for American commerce and security. The treaty secured British withdrawal from the Northwest Territory, opening that region for American settlement. It established a framework for resolving disputes through arbitration rather than warfare. Jay believed he had achieved the best terms possible given America's weak bargaining position. The Senate ratified Jay's treaty by the narrowest possible margin in 1795. President Washington signed it despite his own reservations. The treaty accomplished its primary goal of preventing war with Britain. It also had the unintended effect of accelerating the formation of political parties in America, as Federalists and Democratic Republicans organized to support or oppose the treaty. While Jay was in London negotiating the treaty, he was elected governor of New York. He resigned as Chief Justice in 1795 and served 2 terms as governor until 1801. As governor, Jay focused on legal and prison reform. He was a strong advocate for the gradual abolition of slavery in New York. In 1799, he signed legislation that provided for the gradual emancipation of slaves in the state. Children born to enslaved mothers after July 4, 1799 would be freed after serving their mother's owner for a period of years. This law put New York on the path to ending slavery, though complete abolition would not come until 1827. Jay's support for abolition was genuine and consistent, though he himself had owned slaves earlier in his life. He freed his own slaves and became president of the New York Manumission Society, which worked to end slavery and protect free blacks from kidnapping. Jay believed slavery was incompatible with the principles of the Revolution and that it corrupted both enslaved and enslaver. His advocacy helped establish New York as a center of the abolitionist movement. After serving as governor, Jay retired from public life in 1801 at the age of 55. He retired to his farm in Bedford, New York, where he lived for another 28 years. Jay declined several offers to return to public service, including a reappointment as Chief Justice. He preferred the quiet life of a gentleman farmer. He remained interested in public affairs but participated only from a distance. Jay devoted his retirement to his family, his farm, and his religious faith. He was a devout Episcopalian and served as president of the American Bible Society from 1821 until his death. He maintained correspondence with old friends and colleagues, offering advice when asked but never seeking to return to the political arena. Jay read extensively and reflected on the great events he had witnessed and helped shape. John Jay died at his home in Bedford on May 17, 1829, at the age of 83. He had lived to see the nation he helped create survive and prosper beyond what many had thought possible. The United States had expanded westward, weathered political crises, survived another war with Britain in 1812, and established itself as a growing power. Jay had played crucial roles at every stage of the nation's founding, from the Continental Congress through the Revolution, the peace negotiations, the ratification of the Constitution, and the early federal government. Jay's legacy is complex and multifaceted. As a diplomat, he helped secure American independence and later preserved peace with Britain through his controversial treaty. As Chief Justice, he helped establish the federal judiciary and the Supreme Court's independence. As governor, he advanced the cause of abolition in New York. As a political thinker, his contributions to the Federalist Papers helped secure ratification of the Constitution. But Jay is often overlooked among the Founding Fathers. He lacks the fame of Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, or Hamilton. His reserved personality and aristocratic bearing made him less popular than more charismatic leaders. His diplomatic achievements, while significant, were often controversial and lacked the dramatic appeal of military victories. Jay's treaty, his most important diplomatic accomplishment, made him deeply unpopular during his lifetime. Yet historians have come to appreciate Jay's essential contributions to American independence and constitutional government. His diplomatic skill helped win the Revolutionary War and prevent another war a decade later. His legal expertise helped establish the rule of law in the new nation. His political judgment, though conservative, provided stability during a turbulent era. His advocacy for abolition, though gradual, placed him on the right side of history's greatest moral question. John Jay was a man who served his country in every branch of government and in multiple capacities. He was a legislator, a judge, a diplomat, and an executive. He helped write both a state constitution and essays defending the federal constitution. He negotiated treaties, decided cases, and governed a state. Few Americans have served their country in so many different ways or with such consistent dedication. Jay embodied the ideal of the citizen statesman who serves out of duty rather than ambition. He accepted difficult assignments, endured criticism and abuse, and ultimately stepped away from power to live as a private citizen. He was not a military hero or a revolutionary firebrand. He was a lawyer and diplomat who used his intellect and judgment to help build a nation. In the end, John Jay was the indispensable diplomat whose quiet competence helped secure American independence and establish the foundations for constitutional government.